Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class from Canto 2, Chapter 4, and Text 11. So without further delay, we will start the class. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivajikacharya Astottara Satsishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivajikacharya Astottara Satsishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinni Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्तवृंद की जाय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जाय वृंदावन धाम की जाय मथुरा धाम की जाय नवद्वीप धाम की जाय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जाय जगन्नाथ स्वामी की जाय गंगा माई की जाय जमुना माई की जाय तुलसी देवी की जाय भक्ति देवी की जाय हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय श्यामवेद भक्तविंद की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Sri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Pranaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Niti Namine Namaste Krishna Vadaya Prabhupada Siddhartha Shri Gaura Karana Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namine Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nashtaprayesva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhavatu Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 11. Sutta uvacha iti upamantito ragya gunanukatane hari Rishikesham anusmitya prativaktum prachakrame Sutta uvacha iti upamantito ragya gunanukatane hari Rishikesham anusmitya prativaktum pachakrame sutayuvacha iti upamantito ragya gunanukatame hari Rishikesham anusmitya prativaktum pachakrame. Hare Krishna. Anyone who would like to repeat the Sanskrit content now? Unmute themselves and chant.
Sutta uvacha iti matritto ragnya gunanukatina hare Rishikesha manusmritya prati vaktum prachakrame. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Sutta uvacha iti upamantrito ragya gunanukatane hare Rishikesha manusmritya prativaktam prachakrame. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? All right. Word for word. Sutta Vacha. Sutta Goswami said, Iti das. Upamantrita being requested. Ragya by the king. Guna Anukatane in describing the transcendental attributes of the Lord. Hare of the personality of Godhead. Rishikesham, the master of the senses. Anusmitya, properly remembering. Prativaktam, just to reply. Prachakame, executed the preliminaries. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sutta Goswami said, when Shukadeva Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy of the personality of Godhead, he then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to reply properly, he spoke thus. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The devotees of the Lord, while delivering speeches and describing the transcendental attributes of the Lord, do not think that they can do anything independently. They think that they can speak only what they are induced to speak by the Supreme Lord, the Master of the senses. The senses of the individual being are not his own. The devotee knows that such senses belong to the Supreme Lord and that they can be properly used when they are employed for the service of the Lord. The senses are instruments, and the elements are ingredients, all endowed by the Lord. Therefore, whatever an individual can do or speak or see, etc., is under the direction of the Lord only. The Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15, confirms this. Sarvasya cham hridi sanivishtu matasmriti jnanam apohanamcha. No one is free to act freely and independently. And as such, one should always seek the permission of the Lord to act or eat or speak. And by the blessing of the Lord, everything done by the devotee is beyond the principles of the four defects of the typical conditioned soul. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyana Gyana Shalakaya Chakshu Amritam Dhyana Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manu Vistam Stapitam Dhyana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Vidati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshitarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. English translation again. Srila Goswami said, when Shukadeva Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy or the personality of Godhead, he then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to properly reply, he spoke thus. Hare Krishna. So now Sutta Goswami is addressing the sages as Naimisharanya about part of the conversation and specifically the request made by Maharaj Pariksit to Sukadeva Goswami to now describe the creative energy, the material world. When you see the word creative, then it refers to the material world. The spiritual world is manifested. The two words that are used in the scriptures are creation for the material world and manifestation for the spiritual world. Sometimes the word manifest is used also in the material world, but for the most part, it's creation. So there's the first creation through Mahavishnu, who is an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. First, Krishna expands to Balaram, and then Balaram to the four forms, Vasudev, Anirudh, Sankarshan, Pradyumna. And they expand, especially Sankarshan, to Narayan. There's a Narayan or Vishnu for each spiritual planet. The Narayan expands to the second set of Chaturvyuha, Vasudev, Anirudh, Sankarshan, and Pradyumna. And that Sankarshan, the second Sankarshan, also called Mahasankarshan, is the one through whom Karanodakshaya Vishnu or Mahavishnu, the one whose pores the universe has come out of, expands from the Mahasankarshan. Now, when the universes come to be, then the Sankarshan also, not Sankarshan, but Mahavishnu also now, from him expands Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is one for each universe. And it is through Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and the lotus that grows from his navel, the Lord Brahma is born. So Lord Brahma is not born of a female and male. Lord Brahma is born of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And he's also the one that told Lord Brahma to perform tapasya. Because Lord Brahma did not know what to do. There was no one else around. He couldn't even see Lord Vishnu at the time. But he heard Lord Vishnu's voice saying tapa. So this is how it started. And after Brahma going through that tapasya, then he was taught in his heart how to create the varieties, means the planets in the universe. It is also stated in the Shastra that Lord Brahma creates every day that he wakes up. He creates partially the planets in the universe every day. But every day is not like ours. This is after 8,640,000,000 years, then he creates again. So his day is 4,320,000,000 years, 12 hours of his time. And by the way, it works out to be 100,000 years for every second of Lord Brahma's time. our time, 100,000 years. It's 1 second of Lord Brahma's time. So, of course, time is relative. And for him, his time is normal to him. He'll live 100 years. But to us, it's very, very big, 311 trillion and 40 billion years. That's 100 years for Lord Brahma. So the creative energy is very, very interesting and quite frankly, inconceivable. Mm. But Sukadeva Goswami has been requested by the king for our benefit to describe the creative energy. We are in the material world, so it makes sense to start with things that we know or we have to learn about the material world in connection with Krishna, not learning in isolation from Krishna or Lord Vishnu for that matter. We learn it from Shukadeva Goswami. He's been requested. And the interesting thing here is that when he was requested by the Lord, he then remembered Krishna. Krishna as Hishikesh. So Hishikesh means master of the senses. Hishik means senses. And Srila Prabhupada explains all of that. So master of the senses is Hishikesh. And the interesting thing that we need to learn from the pure devotees in different situations like this, where Shukadeva Goswami has been requested to talk about Krishna's creative, the external energy, and how it's created. He remembered the Lord. And to reply properly, he spoke thus. Well, to reply properly, all pure devotees of the Lord praise Krishna's powers and themselves, put themselves as offering obeisances to the Lord. It always starts out that way, offering obeisances to the Lord. Now, we here in the material world have the spiritual master as the person who we are practicing how to serve the Lord through. The spiritual master's position created by Krishna, Tatpiri Paripatena Paripashtena Sevaya, approach the spiritual master. Krishna, set up spiritual mastership so that we can learn how to serve Krishna properly, because prior to that, we were envious of Krishna lifetimes back. And even though Krishna talked about this is dangerous, what you're doing, you could wind up in the material world, you can wind up making life difficult for yourself. As Srila Prabhupada says, we forced Krishna's hand. We just thought of the idea that we could be independent, and it was attractive to us. So we didn't want to be under Krishna. And so then we got put in the material world. Now, when it comes to the pure devotees, this is a Krishna's mercy showing us how to properly regard Krishna, how to properly serve Krishna. And so the texts that follow this, text 11, text 12, 13, 14, you'll see later on you get to those. That Shukadeva Goswami doesn't even begin to answer the creative energy, the question, the description of creative energy right away. He goes into, as he says here, remembering Rishikesh, Krishna, the master of the senses. He begins to praise Krishna first before he even talks about what Krishna is done with the creative energy, with this external energy. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada tells us, okay, that's one part of it that we just talked about. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada brings another point up, that the devotees of the Lord, when they are delivering speeches and describing the transcendental attributes of the Lord, they don't ever think that they can do anything independently. This is a sign of humility. They think of the Lord all of the time. And so they think that they can speak only when they are induced to speak by the Supreme Lord, Master of the senses. As a matter of fact, they actually pray to ask for help in doing the activity that they're about to do, connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is what we should be about. Immediately we think that we can do things on our own and act independently. That is false ego. That's exactly what false ego is. And Srila Prabhupada himself is a glaring example of when he was asked by his spiritual master to preach Krishna consciousness in the West, and he finally came at a late age, 69, boarding the Jaladuta cargo ship, two heart attacks on the ship later, arrived at the Boston Harbor, Commonwealth Pier in Boston Harbor. Now, those of us, I lived in the Boston area for 9 years, so I know that area quite well. But when Srila Prabhupada saw the skyscrapers, so much sense gratification, and people just doing artha and kama, you could tell immediately. Heavy, heavy mode of passion, especially in that area. Heavy mode of passion. People working hard to raise money. So economic development for sense gratification. That's it. It's all in that area, Boston Harbor area. So when he got there, when Sri Prabhupada got there, he prayed. He prayed to Krishna. You must have something, some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this place? And he's comparing it to Vrindavan, where he was before he came. This is totally, Vrindavan is transcendental. At the very least, they were living, those in Vrindavan lived materially in the mode of goodness. And then they're connected, calling Shrimati Radharani's name the whole time. And then leave that kind of place, which is so spiritually surcharged, and arrive at more ignorance and passion place like Boston Harbor. It is a huge change. It's like going down several steps to underground. Steep now, people are not even thinking about goodness. Goodness is very selective there. And I won't even get into details about it because I just want to describe Boston life. But I experienced it for 9 years. So I could tell a whole lot of things about it. But that is mundane, so we won't even go there. So, Srila Prabhupada's prayer, towards the end, he says, since you brought me here, then you guide me. Srila Prabhupada knew what he was supposed to do because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, his spiritual master, told him exactly what he was supposed to do. He was to spread Krishna consciousness in the West in the English language. Now, for that to manifest, or for that to actually bear fruit, come into existence, Srila Prabhupada appealed to Krishna. He says, make me dance. Like a puppet, make me dance. Make me dance. Dear Lord, make me dance. And he had said, make me dance even before this end here. So my spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, as he was repeating this in a lecture in a workshop in New Vrindavan, repeated this prayer. I didn't talk about the whole prayer. It's just a part of this towards the end here that says, like a puppet, make me dance, dear Lord, make me dance. And we know about puppets. A puppet is manipulated by a puppeteer. So Srila Prabhupada is putting himself in the situation of being a puppet and saying that the parampara, all the way up to Krishna, be the puppeteers to direct him on what to do. He had already said, if it's your will, then make my voice and my message get to their hearts. But from a material standpoint, looking at what was going on in Boston, in the Boston Harbor, this is downtown Boston, a part of downtown Boston. He just couldn't see how these people would turn from a material level, turn to Krishna and live a life in Krishna consciousness, cutting off the very things that they enjoy, sense gratification, cutting it off. So then he said, it's only you that can make it work, dear Lord. So I'll just be a puppet and you guide me through this. This is the example by Srila Prabhupada that teaches us that whatever that we do, as he said, Srila Prabhupada says, we shouldn't think that we are doing work independently. So, Prakriti Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Savasta Ahankara Gunuratma Kataham Itimanyati. The person who is covered up is thinking that they're doing everything on their own. They don't realize that it is the material nature and the modes of material nature that's categorizing and literally spearheading everything that we do. So it actually is like that. Of course, if we talk to a non-devotee, they won't believe it. Says, I have a mind, and I have my senses. They're part of my body, and I do what I have to do when I think about it. Then I put it into effect. So what are you talking about? Three modes of material energy, goodness, passion, and ignorance having something to do with what I'm doing. I'm the master of my own senses. They could think that way. Hmm? But Bhagavad Gita tells us that it doesn't work like that. And the pure devotees are saying they already know it doesn't work like that. Therefore, they pray to the Lord. Hmm? Srila Prabhupada makes it clear that the body is not ours. Therefore, the senses that are part of the body, they are not ours either. A devotee knows that such senses belong to the Supreme Lord and they are used properly when they are employed to serve the Lord. Everything else should be as is necessary, using the senses for material energy. But the priority always should be using the senses to serve the Lord. Therefore, if we begin to cut service opportunities, we are cheating ourselves. We are going away from what should be done. Senses should be used for serving the Lord. That's priority. Everything else is secondary. Hmm? The Lord created the senses. So the senses are the instruments, and the elements are the ingredients. The elements are there: earth, water, fire, air, and space. That's it. Earth, the soil, the ground, and everything that's on there. Fire, the energy source. Water is also an energy source. It can be, but it also is part of it's not only part of it, but it is in different categories: rivers, lakes, oceans, and the air, which is on top, a mixture of, science has found out, different types of gases, some for the different types of parts of the creation. We use oxygen, the plants use nitrogen, and so on. So that's that, and then of course, then the space or ether. So yes, Shukadeva Goswami would describe these, but first he acknowledges the source of these by remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in everything that we do, if we dedicate our lives every day to the Lord, if we dedicate our lives and also everything that we do each day to the Lord, dedicate actually the whole day, each day, then automatically we dedicate our life to the Lord. If we dedicate every day to the Lord, then we are dedicating our lives to the Lord. Dedicate means we pray that the Lord handle the day according to what he wants, and that we be a puppet. For the Lord to be the puppeteer, the spiritual master is also the puppeteer as representative of the Lord, and we get guided that way. So Srila Prabhupada proves the point that Krishna is the source. He is the puppeteer by quoting Bhagavad Gita chapter 15, Yoga of the Supreme Person, and text 15, Salvasya Chaham Shridishana Vishtu Matan Spiti Gyanam Apohanam Cha. Krishna is saying, as Paramatma, I am seated in everyone's heart, the heart of every living entity. And he's the one that gives knowledge and even controls remembrance as well as forgetfulness. So there was an interesting thing that happened in India. Radhanath Swami said in one of his lectures, I used to listen to at some point back, every day, one lecture by Radhanath Swami. And in one of the lectures, he told the story about what happened to some students at IIT. Indian Institute of Technology in India. They were the students. There were some students who were regularly coming to Chapati, to the temple. And then, of course, the rest of the student body at IIT, they were faced with an exam that was a very, very important, consequential exam. In other words, what happens to them in graduation. So it's all part of it. Going from one year to the next. So these exams, they were all studying very hard for it. There were the woody young men who were also at IIT at the time. And everyone was using as much time as they could to study for the exams. Those who were the woodies that were coming, even though they needed every second that they could muster to get prepared for the exams, they never stopped their japa. They attended temple programs, they chanted their rounds, and they also studied, putting the spiritual activities as priority, even though the exams were very important for graduation or for moving on at IIT. Those students didn't stop. That's first lesson. There are some parents that sometimes tell their children, because you're preparing for so and so and so, therefore cut times off of temple programs. Let me just finish this story so you learn from it. So anyway, these students, few of them, compared to the whole set of students taking the test. The time came, we took the test. And the person that did best happened to be one of the devotees coming to Chapati. The word got around that the top boost, or the person that did the best, was actually a devotee in the Chapati temple. Nana Swami tells this story. And so he said not long after that, he got a whole bunch of new people. Guess who they were? Students from IIT. They came to Chapati. Why? Because a devotee had topped all of them, had studied, and they wanted to find out what it is that devotee does spiritually to give him that kind of ability to do so well, better than them in the exams. So since he was the person coming to the Chapati temple, they also wanted to come basically to find out whatever magic that's there that made this person do so well. They want to find out in the temple. As soon as he said that, the people started laughing like anything. It's okay, well, we'll get them any way we can. Let them come. So he had done so well. The important point, though, is that he didn't stop his sadhana. He did not. He kept chanting. Now, another smart thing about what he did was, if anything had happened to him, he's already a devotee. If because of preparing for the exam, he had stopped doing what he was supposed to do as a devotee, just to make sure that he takes all that time into preparing for the test, and he didn't chant, and since death comes at any time, say something happened to him and he died, thinking more of the tests than what his duty was in sadhana to Krishna, where do you think he'd go? Back to the spiritual world? Absolutely out of the question. He would have been brought back to the material world, and he was aware of that. And therefore, he did not let his, necessary preparation for the test stop him from his sadhana. The point we're making here is Krishna consciousness should not be stopped. Krishna consciousness activity should not be stopped just because of academics. Even if you do well in academics and you get a very high degree, what happens? Does that guarantee you everlasting life? Nope. Not for material things. So anyway, a good many of his classmates visited the Chowpatty temple, just wanting to find out what was to be done in the temple in order to improve their grades. Hmm? Krishna Prabhupada says no one is actually free to act freely and independently. Hmm? So everyone should seek the permission of the Lord to act or eat or speak. And some of these things are just they're just infused in what we do. For example, those of us that go to Harrisburg Temple, hmm, when the program is finished on Sunday, we say the Prasadam prayer even before we go down one floor to have the Prasadam. So we act in Krishna consciousness, we eat in Krishna consciousness, we listen to lectures of someone speaking about Krishna, and by that way, we are growing in Krishna consciousness the whole time. So we need to understand that the blessing of the Lord comes from devotional service, and that blessing covers everything, including things material. Otherwise, why would Maharaj Pariksit be asking Shukadeva Goswami to describe the creative energy of the Lord, the material creative energy of the Lord? Material life, material things also belong, material abilities also belong to Krishna. So once we satisfy Krishna's senses by bhakti yoga, then everything else we need falls in place. If you prioritize ye yatama papajante tam siteva bhajami aham. The extent that you surrender, I reward accordingly, Krishna says. Hmm? So it is also humility to have that understanding that God is behind everything. Hmm? So who better to ask for guidance through prayer than Krishna himself or his representative? We are taught to go to the spiritual master. This is where we get our questions answered. But we also have to perform archana, which is serving the deity. Devotional service includes that. But our false ego sometimes makes us think that we are the doers. As we said in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 27, Prakritikriya Manani Gunai Karma Nisavasya, Ahankar Vimudatma Kataham Iti Manyati. The direct translation is that the bewildered spirit soul who is under the influence of the material nature, modes of material nature. They think, or he thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. So in that particular shloka in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada says you can see two persons, one in Krishna consciousness, the other one in material consciousness. They may be doing the same thing. So they may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. Case in point, the Kurukshetra war. Arjun was shooting arrows. Duryodhana was shooting arrows. So externally, they seem to be doing the same thing. Just that they're different parts of the opponents. But the activity they're doing is activities for Kshatriyas. What's the reason behind it? Well, the reason is where the big difference is. Arjun is shooting arrows on behalf of Krishna. Krishna has ordered him, he's carrying out Krishna's orders. Just like we're supposed to carry out the orders of a spiritual master. And representative of a spiritual master is the senior devotee and the person in management. They go by the instructions and permission of the spiritual master and they carry it down to everybody else. Duryodhana was shooting arrows because he wanted to be the next king or the next emperor. That's what his aim. He had a material aim in mind. And Arjun was obeying Krishna, and activities for Krishna are spiritual. So Arjun was performing the same activity as Duryodhana. Duryodhana was performing for material reasons, and Arjun was performing for spiritual reasons. So our activities should be connected, which is the word we use is dovetailed, one way or the other for Krishna consciousness, spiritual consciousness. for spiritual activities, for spiritual aims, to fulfill those. Hmm? Anyone that has a particular material ability should use that ability in serving at the temple. Approach management, talk about things that you're able to do, and volunteer that expertise in serving. Because when you do that, then one, you have spiritualized that ability. Two, you will get spiritual credits for it. Three, Krishna is satisfied and happy with the fact that you are turning what he has given you abilities to serve him. And that gives us the opportunity to get closer and closer and closer to that glorious day when we are allowed to go back to Godhead. So those who are in material consciousness don't understand that the mechanism of the body itself, which is studied in anatomy and all of that, in physiology, they are produced by material nature. And the material nature works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. So materialistic people, they have no knowledge that ultimately everything is under the control of Krishna. And therefore they take credit for everything that they're doing as if they're working independently. And that is a symptom of their nations. Not long ago, there was some, as they call it, pralaya. The weather gave a lot of problems in the North Carolina area. Now they're saying there's another one coming. Hurricane Category 5, that's going to be hitting Florida and so on. Some things they were describing about in different other places. Do we have control over those things? How much work can we plan to do on our own when such a thing is getting ready to happen? Now, from science, we've been forewarned about it. But even if we're forewarned, can we stop our buildings from just being razed to the ground? We can't. So how much control do we have? And if we don't have much control, why do we think we can work independently when the weather alone can change things in just a fraction of a second? So the gross body and the subtle body are both the creation of material nature under the supervision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, all bodily activities, all mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna. That should be very clear to us. Now, Srila Prabhupada in particular, we can learn from him. He attributed his success to two things. One, his strong faith in Krishna, strong faith in the Lord. And that is very important for us. No one should steer us away from Krishna. People will say all kinds of things. Even people in religion will say all kinds of things. But we have to understand all of these religions, at best, take us to the higher planetary systems in the jail. They're still part of the material world. None of them can take us to the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada's strong faith in the Lord and guidance from his spiritual master. Those are the two things. The spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada, told him two things. That one, spread Krishna consciousness in the West. Actually, when he was born, the astrologers said that at the age of 70, he would cross the seas and spread our religion throughout the world, in different parts of the world. That prediction was made, but that was a prediction then. The order came from a spiritual master. The guidance came from the spiritual master. The spiritual master said another thing. You get money, print books. And Srila Prabhupada obeyed the spiritual master, came to the West, wrote, and had the books printed. Not only is it was printed in-house, in the manner of speaking. They got printing presses so they wouldn't have to depend on others to get the books. And to this day, it's still going on. books from Srila Prabhupada printed and distributed. Over 500 million books have been distributed, and more are being distributed every day. The same points apply to us if we choose to see it that way. The same points, strong faith in the Lord and guidance from the spiritual master. We can live like that too, like he did. Hmm? We got to understand that all activities are due to Hrishikesh, Krishna, the master of the senses. Hmm? They are also due to Paramatma guiding us to the intelligence from within, and the spiritual master also guiding us from without. Now, when we say spiritual master, for us, we need to stretch it also to the devotees who have heard for decades from the spiritual masters and are using the experience in also guiding. Hmm? Their information are just as good as the information and the guidance from the spiritual master because they have learned. Hmm? You go to a particular place, the person that's experienced, for example, if you go into medical school and you finish the theoretical part of it with some few experiments here and there, then you go in for the actual training, called a resident. Actual training. Who trains you? Another doctor. A doctor with experience. Now, that doctor did not get born with that experience. Someone else trained him. And he got good at it. And now he got to the point where he could train other up and coming doctors. So that's how it works. The spiritual master may train the devotee, and over years, usually 30 years or more, the person becomes very experienced. And even though he is not a spiritual master in terms of the Diksha type guru, initiating guru, but he or she is in a Shiksha position because they have learned and now they can give guidance. So we should always give special thanks to Guru and Guranga for any activities that devotees are satisfied with what we do. Not say it's ours. No, we give thanks to Guru and Guranga because the Lord guides us through the intelligence to do the things that we're able to do. And we should also be excited to take on the next service and do it with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is required. Next over instruction tells us. We should be excited or enthusiastic and patient also. Very determined, enthusiastic, and patient. Patience means things happen in Krishna's time. We should always see ourselves as puppets. Krishna, being pleased with us, what we do, then will guide us to serve even better in other situations that come up. And from that service, love then begins to develop in our hearts. We also feel fortunate because we know that Krishna is preparing us to leave the material world ultimately, and that we don't have long to stay in the material world. Actually, nobody has a long time to stay in the material world because life itself is cut down to only 100 years. And we started 2024 yesterday, and we're already in October. Time's going very fast. But actually, it's felt that way from decades back. Time just flies like that. So we don't have long to stay in the material world. But the one thing that tends to stop our proper service is nothing but the false ego. So we also have to understand that one thing about this particular society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, it's actually based on the spiritual world model. It actually is set up like that, the spiritual world model. In the spiritual world, those who are serving are servants of the servants of the servants. And we also have hierarchy. And so a few things to do to make sure that our false ego does not sabotage the quest that we have to become purer and purer and get the mercy of the Lord and go back. First, we need to respect our leaders. We need to respect our leaders. Vaishnav aparad means doing things that makes the other devotee uncomfortable or even upset. If you don't respect the leaders, then they would have no reason to be comfortable with us. That's already Vaishnava Parad. Sometimes our activities alone, Vaishnava Parad. Leaders tell you to do something, you act like you don't care. That's already Vaishnava Parad. Why? Because if you don't care, if you don't act like you don't care, the leader is a devotee. How are you going to feel? Happy with you? No. They're going to feel upset. And if you're upset the person, you've committed an offense. So to even when you tell the certain things and you don't do, or even you ignore, even ignoring alone, that's a Vaishnava Parad. Because it leads to negative feelings. So we need to understand this. We talked yesterday that when we bring suggestions, we could do that by asking questions. So our own feelings don't get hurt when they get rejected sometimes because the need's there. We need to be patient when our suggestion is not taken yet. And definitely, one of the things that people with big false egos do is they start micromanaging. They're the leader, but they decided doing things outside of that. Thinking that we can implement better decisions. But we talked about ISKCON being set up like in a hierarchical position, just like it is in the spiritual world. We have heard even among the gopis, there's 108 principal gopis, then 16 among them, then 8 among them. And from that 8, then there's 2 among them that are very close to Radha and Krishna. So clearly, the hierarchy is there, but they don't work based on false ego, though. Positions are there and decisions are going to have to be made. That's everywhere. It is in the spiritual world, so it's set up that way here. So anyone that gives a leader a hard time, doesn't respect, that ignores a leader, shouldn't even think of getting anywhere near the spiritual world because there are leaders there. If you don't respect the leader here, you're not going to be respecting the gopis either. So he's just saying, oh, well, they are the spiritual. When I get there, then I'll respect them. With a bad habit already, bad character, you won't be let in. You will not be let in. Come back and do it again in the material world. So we need to be patient, even when we have good suggestions and they're not taken yet, because the priority is done by the leader. The leader is also a leader. He's just serving. My Guru Maharaj coined the word servant leader. They're also serving. They don't get paid. It's all voluntary. So don't micromanage. And even when you ask questions, don't ask it in a challenging mood. We already have been told. So, we go to Guru and ask questions in a submissive mood. Therefore, the submissive mood should be all of the time. It's also important sometimes because we want to have other people look at us like we're so experienced or we're so senior and so on. There's a need to be honest. We shouldn't pretend that we are someone we're not, putting out an image that we're wonderful when so many faults are there. And this one, next one, we're talking about even directly affects this program. There's a need for punctuality. It's also part of seva. Need for punctuality. Now, there's also an important thing, which is we need to understand that we may make mistakes. But making mistakes does not mean we're a failure. Making mistakes are part of the 4 defects of a conditioned soul. So we should be ready to apologize when the mistake is made. It's obvious and people have been affected by the mistake. Apologize. And we have to understand when it comes to apologizing, it does not lower our dignity. Oh, this is just stupid. There's some people saying, never apologize. Apologizing means that I'm admitting that that person that I'm apologizing to is smarter than me. Mata Smriti Gyanam Apunam Cha. Krishna says, knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness comes from me. Krishna is saying that. Therefore, a person's intelligence is from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We shouldn't think like commies and say this person has this IQ and that person has this IQ and this. No. Remembrance and forgetfulness are from the Lord. If we serve, then the Lord will control our remembrance and forgetfulness according as is needed. So these are points that would help put the false ego at a distance from us. We say one more point, and it doesn't need to understand that if we behave badly, it reflects on our initiating guru and ISKCON as a whole. We need to understand if we have bad behavior, it's an embarrassment to our Diksha Guru as well as ISKCON. ISKCON is how the devotees, of course, devotees in there behave badly, then devotees get affected, the negative. So then you're offending devotees. And if we behave badly and people from outside see it, they say, oh, this society is not good. Then they won't even want to be a member or join. Diksha Guru is the one that has taken the vow to guide us in this life back to the spiritual world. And so if we're in bad behavior, that is also embarrassing to the Guru. So all of these points, when we're aware of them, then our service becomes better, the false ego gets muzzled, checked, that is, and that way we, along with remembering everything comes from Krishna, our abilities come from Krishna. He says, I'm the ability in man. He said it in Bhagavad Gita. So Shukadeva Goswami is remembering Krishna because of the questions asked by Maharaj Pariksit to talk about the creative energy of the Lord. He's remembering Krishna, and he's going to start by offering obeisances and praise to Krishna before he even begins to answer. And I mean, quite a few texts, 6, 7, 8 texts ahead coming up, will all be praised that Shukadeva Goswami is given to the Supreme Personality of Godhead before he talks about the creative energy of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So thank you again for listening and for coming on and coming regularly. It's very, 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 very good for all. We get to learn and we get to share also, which is the time to do now. Anybody that's interested can unmute themselves and whatever they picked up that they want to stress, whatever question that they have, they can do that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance to Soga Shishra
Accept
Prabhupada.
mine. Bless you, Prabhupada.
I have a question from the purport, and it's pretty, at least for me, it's intriguing. But in the last few sentences where Shri Prabhupada says that we ask the Lord for permission to act, speak on something, I forgot the third one. Can you shed some light on that? That was pretty interesting for me. To ask the Lord to act, speak, and I forgot the third one, but if you can shed some light on
so
that.
thank you. So the part of it,
Yeah.
that particular sentence in the purport, I'll read it verbatim. No one is free to act freely. No one can act freely and independently. And as such, one should always seek the permission of the Lord to act or eat or speak. And by the blessing of the Lord, everything done by the devotee will not only be, sanctioned by the Lord, but will even be free of the 4 defects typical of the conditioned soul. Cheating, illusion, and having imperfect senses, those kind of things. So, so what it says that no one is free to act independently. No one is free to act independently. Everything is done through the material nature, and that's controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Paramatma. So because that one is he's prefaced that whole idea of asking permission from the Lord to do different activities. Because we don't do things independently, and if we understand that everything is done through material nature, which is handled by the Lord, controlled by the Lord, then it makes sense that we should always, as Papa is saying, seek permission of the Lord in all situations. If we're going to speak, we have to do prayers asking the Lord to allow us to speak. And not only that, use us like puppets and have the information come from them through us to the people who are going to be doing the listening. To eat, particularly, we have to say the prayer. We have to eat what is offered to Krishna, and we have remnants. And in general, all our actions should be based on Krishna consciousness, directly or indirectly. And the intelligence to have everything based on Krishna consciousness will also come from Krishna. So we should seek permission, act in prayer to Krishna, say things in prayer to Krishna, and then we act. That's what I meant to say. Act based on the request to do things for Krishna using the senses. So our whole day should be dedicated to service like that. Even when we are on the job and we're thinking, well, this is a job and I don't know how I'm going to connect that. This is not Krishna conscious, but the job gives you some pay. You take some of it and you give to the temple or other projects that are Krishna conscious projects. You are actually connecting the job to Krishna consciousness because it is through the job that you got paid, and therefore we're able to take some of what you were paid and give it to help pay the bills in the temple and other activities and other programs in the temple, make that become possible. So yes, we have to ask for permission because if we have the understanding that everything comes from Krishna, we are not really independent. In one lecture, Srila Prabhupada says, independence means, if we think we're independent, it means we are more dependent. We are at the mercy of the weather. And so, even for protection, it comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is under his control. So that's why it's there. Srila Prabhupada put it like that, that we have to seek permission. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? If not, okay, we're past the hour now. It's 4 minutes after 9. So we can stop here. Thank you all for coming. And remember, today is Tuesday. We are only a couple of days away from His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami in ISKCON, Sannyasi, stopping by 6 o'clock program on Thursday at the temple. He is he's his nickname is, I don't know about nickname, but they call him a gentleman, real gentleman. He's really proper pimp and proper, just, his own demeanor. Some of us know him personally, have heard him preach. And his singing is also very wonderful. So you can hear him on YouTube, literally. Some programs that he started, the beginning of the program, that is, temple program, and they recorded him singing. Very, very nice, very wonderful. So Bhakti Chaitanya Swami will be coming. He have his nice British accent. I still remember him. Hare Krishna. Of course, he's gotten much older now. The time I remember I saw him was in the 90s, mid-90s, at Giranagri when he came. So, Panchakalpatarubhishya Kripasunive Eva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, 6 o'clock Thursday program. Shira Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Glory to the Lord.